This video is titled How to Ascend, and it's for those who are truly serious about their spiritual life and who are dedicated to their spiritual evolution. I consider this the most important video I've ever made because it contains the secret to transforming your life in every positive way, starting now and continuing on through all your future incarnations. And the best part of this is it doesn't require you to spend hours meditating every day, and it's remarkably simple, as you'll soon learn. Wouldn't you like to know how to guarantee your next life will be on a world based on and filled with enlightened people who radiate unconditional love? You know, many people are waiting and hoping for a new golden age of Aquarius that will soon dawn and lift them up into the fourth or even fifth dimensional world, where there's peace and love and abundance. And what they don't realize is in order for you to sustain this experience as a place where you live permanently, you must make internal consciousness shifts to raise your consciousness to those levels. So yes, the energies of the Aquarian age are going to help you, but it's not going to do it all for you. Now, even if you are somehow catapulted into a higher frequency realm, you would automatically descend to the level of whatever your consciousness level is. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and your weakest link is the degree of negative, ego-based beliefs and reactions you still have, and those are what define your consciousness level and therefore your reality. So, now the big question is, how do you make this upward shift? I'm going to explain exactly how to do this in detail, and you're going to be amazed at just how simple it is. Oh, you know, I'm amazed that people like to talk about these things, but rarely do I hear someone explain how to do it. And yet people seem to get very excited about hearing new information. Well, in this video, I'm going to provide you with some information, but information is really of very little value unless you also know how to use it and you put it into practice. Now, sometimes religions make human evolution to sainthood to be an elusive goal that's reserved for some very special people. Even though, you know, in Psalm 82:6, it says you are all gods and children of the Most High, but religion usually labels humans as sinners, even born with an original sin, and trying to become purified is nearly impossible. And yet Jesus said in Matthew 5:48, "Be you perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." That sounds impossible, doesn't it? But would he have said it if it were not possible? So then the question becomes, first of all, what does it mean to be perfect? The word itself makes it seem impossible. I mean, how can anyone ever say that they are perfect? Yet that is what he tells us to do. The answer lies in what is called self-discovery, and that's a process of revealing the purity and perfection of the soul that you are. The challenge we have is the core soul that we are is covered by so many layers of negative beliefs and reactions, and so it takes a serious amount of effort to uncover it. But as I continue, I'm going to show you a simple and direct way to do just that. Oh, did I say simple? It is, but it's certainly not necessarily always easy. And you'll soon discover that it's not, but that's only due to the conditioning and the belief that we've acquired over lifetimes. Now, as I explain this key to your consciousness evolution and ascension, you're going to quickly realize just how obvious it is, but it's rarely done in ways that deepen and expand it to fill your entire consciousness in every experience that you have. So I'm going to alert you ahead of time that even though you may think that you've heard this before, you're going to find that it is much more challenging than you might think. And yet it is so simple. So, yes, you'll think that you've heard it before until you apply yourself to it, in which case you're going to realize there's a depth to this that you've missed. Now, first of all, as you actually already know, all spiritual teachers have emphasized that love is the way and of paramount importance. The first question then becomes after that is, what is love? Love and desire, or wanting, go hand in hand, and here's what that means. Love is wanting something to exist and continue. And as such, love is the creative force behind everything that exists. And it is also the sustaining fabric of everything. I'll clarify this further in just a minute, but consider this first. Quantum physicists have been saying that we live in something like a hologram projection, similar to the Matrix movie. And when you realize that everything is a projection, you next realize that something is causing the projections. And that something that drives the projector to project is love, which I'm saying is wanting something to exist and is fully acceptant of all creations without judgments. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about romantic love as it is often portrayed in movies. I'm talking about a higher understanding of what love is. You see, love is experienced at all levels of existence and evolution, but is experienced differently by each creation depending on the consciousness level of the being. What I'm explaining here is not readily understood by the analytical mind, the so-called scientific mind, because you can't measure these concepts with instruments. But they are nonetheless the basis of all of the oldest religions and philosophies, and they're well known and practiced by meditators who are familiar with lies beyond the range of physical senses. So, anyone watching this video can maybe disagreeing with what I'm saying, just hasn't ventured into the realms beyond their senses, and therefore they're missing the greater part of existence. They're like a bird in a cage, only perceiving what is able to be observed from that limited point of view. So you can disagree all you want, but you would only be reinforcing the bars of your own cage. Love is the energy that underlies creation, and furthermore, without love, everything would cease to exist. But fortunately, that's actually impossible. You could further say the underlying causation, or the source of all that exists, is God. Now, for any atheists who might be watching, this is important to understand how I'm using that term, because most of the time when I hear atheists proclaiming they don't believe in God, they're actually referring to a type of God that many religions define as a supreme being or a supernatural person. But I'm using that word a little differently. The way I use the word God, I'm referring to both the form and the formlessness that underlies everything that exists. God, in the way I am applying the word, is the intelligence within everything that exists. So that every time you open your eyes, everything you see is God. And every time you close your eyes, everything you imagine is God. In a sense, everything is made out of God. And God, or divine intelligence, is what sustains all creation. And that is done with and through love. Most spiritual paths recognize God is love, but not the love that most people are familiar with. And here's what that means. A natural outpouring of love is the energy of creation, and it's what causes everything that exists to take form. The love emanates from the core of the source of God, in the form of infusing creation with the impulse to receive love and be love and return love to the divine source of love. Sometimes this is expressed simply as a desire to love and be loved. The desire I'm speaking of is not like a desire that you might have for something such as ice cream. It's more like the natural expression of the nature of the core source of everything, projecting an intention for all forms of existence to manifest. This is an all-pervasive love, and it's an intention that allows all the individual forms of manifestation to exist in all the ways the individuals want to experience existence. So some want to merge into the formless ocean of consciousness. That's what Buddhists and non-dualists refer to as nirvana. But many others love existence so much in form, they will rather choose to continue in that way. And in that latter case, many of the choices are made by unconscious forces that have been set in motion by the individual's beliefs, which were set in place in that past. So, as strange as it might seem, some are conformed to have negative experiences. Now, you can include the concept of karma in my use of the term choice. Even though karma functions mostly off of unconscious beliefs or patterns, this is energy that has been set in motion in the past. So what are referred to as karmic consequences function mostly automatically without the individual even being aware of why the conditions are as they are. In other words, many of the choices are not conscious or deliberate. They're made from unconscious or subconscious belief programs, and therefore they can appear to arise randomly or even counter to what a person's conscious desire and will is. All right, now, all of that said, the core projection from the divine source is love and be loved. And these go out in waves like ripples on a pond. And they're interpreted in an infinite number of ways through an infinite number of dimensions or universes. Much of this is explained further in my Handbook for Enlightenment and Ascension, so I'm not going to elaborate further on that. But this is of a foundational importance to our discussion here, because it provides all the fields and dimensions in which we can have experiences. The forms of experiences depend on what qualities or frequencies that you want based on the deepest conscious and unconscious beliefs that you hold, and therefore what you project. Think of the movie The Never-Ending Story, in which the nothingness was consuming, disintegrating, and erasing all existence. And it was the main character's love and passion and enjoyment of existence that made everything rejuvenate. If you've not seen that movie, I encourage you to see it. Now, I know, of course, a movie is not proof of anything, but this movie portrays an awareness of the underlying reality of how and why everything that exists in the matrix does exist. This is not arrived through analytical thinking, because there is no way that I know of to scientifically prove it to the satisfaction of everyone. However, you might realize that's the case with most spiritual realizations. What's interesting is the main character in this movie is called Atreyu. And that sounds coincidentally rather similar to Maitreya, who is characterized as a world teacher, expected for generations by all the world's major religions. Some think of him as Christ who will return. Some refer to him as the coming Messiah. Hindus look for the coming of Krishna, and Buddhists expect him as Maitreya Buddha. In the movie, Atreyu, or Maitreya, restores the creation by loving it, desiring it, and therefore manifesting it. According to major religions, a goal of human life is to evolve in consciousness to become enlightened. And enlightenment is a rather elusive word to define. But one word that's closest to an equivalent of enlightenment is acceptance, but to a very high and deep degree, devoid of any judgments, and not coincidentally, it is also a major component of love, because whatever is loved is accepted without reservation or judgment. This is a very important realization for the practice that I'm going to be describing for you. And this is where what I said at the beginning, when I described the process, is simple, but not always easy. A practice often attached to spirituality is mindfulness, and that includes being consciously aware of every thought and movement. Now, let's take love and hitch it to mindfulness and apply it to everyone and everything and every situation. You can see how this would require not only becoming aware and attentive, but also actively engaged in enhancing and embracing everything with love. And I put an emphasis on the word everything. All forms of love had a frequency and a vibration. And usually also there's a feeling component. So just think of what you feel when you hug someone you care for, or the feeling you have when you're holding a puppy or a kitten. You can also feel a warm glow when someone tells you a heartfelt story, or maybe when someone tells you they love you. Now, take those feelings and apply them with the intention to embrace absolutely everyone and everything, including everything you notice, everything you are doing with the presence, feeling, and vibrations of the purest unconditional love and acceptance you can imagine. You literally become a source projecting love at everything, or into everything. Remember, I told you this was simple, but it's not always easy. However, with practice, it becomes easy. Why? Because it is the core true self of who you are. That's sometimes called the natural self, or the soul. But there is a catch. Here is one of the biggest challenges with this. And it may even seem counterintuitive to maintain your inner stability of love when you're in the presence of negative people or negative conditions. So for instance, in the case where you're hurt by someone, physically or emotionally, or you hear about the negative things some people are doing, by maintaining the love that you feel and operate from inside of you, you transform your relationship with everything in your universe, and you metamorphose into a saint or an ascended being. Now, an extreme example of what I'm talking about here is revealed in the words of Jesus as he was dying on the cross. "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they are doing." That's in Luke 23:34. Now, whether you believe anything about Jesus or not, consider what it would take for you to say those words about someone who has beaten and tortured you in the process of killing you. That reaction is beyond normal human understanding, but it emanates from the very nature of your enlightened soul, which was created from love and is made out of love. And then you read this scripture in Philippians 2 and verse 5. "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus." So now we have a goal and an order of what we are to become. When love becomes the fullness of whom and what you realize you are, at that point, you lock into the dimensions where that is all there is. You can and will live all future existences where love dominates all who live there. Can you imagine for just a minute what it might be like to live on a world where everyone is unconditionally loving and all the ego-driven judgments, emotions, reactions, and beliefs no longer exist? This is what saints, angels, and ascended masters experience as their everyday reality. It is also what people associate with heaven and dimensions of fifth vibrational level and above. And that's what so many are looking forward to ascending into. So many are waiting for the golden age to emerge in the hopes that they will automatically elevate to fifth dimensional living, not realizing that each person determines that individuality. And it is not automatic. Sure, the rising frequencies of the whole planet, Earth, are going to help you and make it easier, but each person has to engage until love dominates the totality of a person's consciousness. And that takes deliberate attention and application until it overtakes the totality of your consciousness. At that point, you realize it has been your underlying natural state all along, even when you were living in the distortions and illusions that created pain, struggle, and suffering. Let me summarize how to become an ascended being of pure love. Find yourself observing everything that comes into your awareness, and before you do anything else, hold it in love. Let me repeat that. Observe everything that comes into your awareness, and before you do anything else, hold it in love. You can also apply this to everything that you identify with as part of you. For instance, you can apply the love and deep acceptance of your race. I love the race I am. I love my ancestors. I love my heritage. I love my friends. I love the soul I am. I love and appreciate my body. I love and appreciate this day. And of course, you can say hundreds of more such affirmations. Since love is the creative force behind all existence, becoming a channel of love is what will enable you to live your entire future with others where pure unconditional love is the nature of the entire dimension. Many people imagine heaven is like that, and those dimensions do exist. But in order to enter and sustain living in those realms, you must fully integrate the totality of unconditional love yourself. You literally love yourself into manifesting heaven, or what many would call fifth dimensional reality or higher. When you reach this level, love will be what you experience as your ascension, as well as your next incarnation in whatever place or dimension that might be. These insights highlight many challenges, and yet they also map out how to reach your evolutionary goals. I personally am taking this very seriously myself, and I'm applying myself daily to refining myself into a more full expression of love. To be 100% successful with sustaining love toward everything, every moment, requires the complete dissolution of the ego. And this is where the biggest challenge lies. According to David Hawkins, in the many books that he wrote, This doesn't occur until a person reaches 850 on his consciousness scale that goes from 0 to 1,000. And he said that those who reach 850 are quite rare, despite the fact that many think they're already there. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with his numbers, but I'm only pointing out the fact that he recognized how rare it is for people to reach this level. And I think that's because people have not had explained to them how. They might have been told they're supposed to be that way, but how do you do it? The ego is the only obstacle to the love practice that I've been describing. And the ego has been entrenched and built over many lifetimes until it has infiltrated every aspect of your individuality. And it usually operates in the background, so you're not even consciously aware of it, until it periodically surfaces as such things as anger and fear, anxiety, guilt, judging, intolerance, impatience, defensiveness, depression, futility, low self-esteem, abandonment, powerlessness, victimhood, irritation, jealousy, bitterness, self-doubt, wickedness, misery, resentment, demanding, insecurity, hopelessness, helplessness, feeling lost, inflexibility, opinionated, neediness, controlling, vain, arrogance, criticalness, unforgiving, and much more. Believe it or not, that list is only partial. There are hundreds of other words I could have listed there. But it emphasizes the extent that the ego has defined what many people accept as what it is to be human. And yet it is completely untrue and illusion. The soul is the true self. Most people think this list is just part of a normal personality. Everybody has those feelings and reactions, don't they? And unfortunately, in most cases, it is that, until those things are clear, and they can be. I don't really think normal is the correct word to apply. The ego is anything but normal. The ego is the most complex collection of limiting and fear-based beliefs, judgments, and negative reactions. And even among those who recognize this, most do not know how to eliminate the ego characteristics. They talk about killing the ego. And if there's one thing the ego knows how to do, it's survive. And it'll bring every trick in the book to trick you into perpetuating it and keeping its individuality and separation and all of its reactions and belief alive, because it wants to live. It's a survival mechanism. It wants safety and security. So the usual approach that I hear people taking and trying to defeat the ego is some form of passive meditation or Zen meditation. You quiet your mind, or maybe you repeat a mantra, or you just try to be still and at peace, or you try to transcend into some higher state of consciousness in the hope and usual vain attempt that those things are going to eventually completely dissolve the ego. And I'm not saying they won't, but if you have that approach, it'll undoubtedly take many, many lifetimes. It's a very slow path. The reason this is true is that each of the ego's characteristics are survival mechanisms derived from fear, which is the strongest force other than love. And because the ego is so extensive, has so much knowledge from your entire history, it requires mindfulness to not only become aware of its deceptions, but also the active participation in removing all portions of it, until only the soul remains. And this is where subtle energy clearing is essential for accelerating the process. Now, if you don't care about how fast, continue with whatever you've been doing, of sitting in stillness and quietness, and you'll see. Because often you can meditate in that manner, and then you come out of the meditation, and very shortly you find yourself ego reacting again. So you can choose to go the slow route of passive meditation, or maybe using psychological techniques, and there's a whole plethora of them, and they do work, they're helpful. Or you can choose to become aware of the trait, recognize that it is not your soul, and deliberately use clearing practices to remove the thought forms that are ego-based, causing those reactions. Not actively doing this will result in frustration over the continually resurfacing of ego characteristics. Until the ego is completely gone and only the soul remains, it is impossible to sustain 100% pure, deep, unconditional love 24 hours a day, every day of the week, every day of the year, at all times. And yet, this is the goal of our evolution, to become perfect, as Jesus said we should become. And sooner or later, everyone will reach this level. It's just a matter of how long you choose to take in getting there. Here's how you can practice incorporating this in your life. Begin projecting love to everything you notice. The clothes you wear, the chair you sit on, the tissue box on your desk, the toilet, your car, your pen, everything you can think of, everything you lay your eyes on, including all the people who come into your day. With this practice, you can become the embodiment of love. It can become your full nature and radiate from you, and therefore you will evolve as much as is possible. This practice I outlined starts as a mindful practice. It's very deliberate. And for a while, you may find yourself forgetting to do it, and even find yourself reacting in some non-loving ways. But for you to evolve love, you must become a natural automatic outcome of your consciousness. Love must become that. It is your very nature. And so it is the way that must emanate from you at all times, even without deliberate thought. And to evolve to that point, early on you must monitor yourself and check to ensure that each thought, word, and action springs from pure unconditional love. And if it isn't, pause and embrace whatever it is with the love of your heart and soul. And fill your mind and feelings with love, so everything in your world becomes love, including you. These are the important words I have for you, and now you have some homework. This is what will bring the golden age to Earth, and what will enable your ascension as well as frame all of your future lives. If you'd like further help with this, I'll refer you to my book on Amazon, Handbook for Enlightenment and Ascension. And that's in audio and in print and in Kindle. And I also have an audio program titled Discover the Power of Deep Love that has more explanations and a dozen guided meditations that will help you with this process. The link is in the description below. It is my wish and my intention that your life be filled with love forevermore.